Blue Jackets want to retool their defense, but they also want to keep both Provorov and Fabbro. How is that going to work? Well, maybe it won't. We discuss which one the Blue Jackets should keep on today's Locked on Blue Jackets.
You're Locked on Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked on Blue Jackets, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Joe Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked on Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. Now, we're going to keep our defensive week going. Obviously, yesterday we talked about Aaron Ekblad, how he would fit into the team, whether he would be a decent replacement if the Blue Jackets cannot end up keeping Dante Fabbro. And kind of in that conversation, I talked a little bit about do you take Fabbro or Ekblad? Do you take Provorov or Gavrikov? Because those are like the obvious comparisons, right? But here's the thing. Don Waddell has gone on record saying that he wants to retool the Blue Jackets defense this summer. But he's also said that he wants to keep Dante Fabbro and Ivan Provorov if he can. And that's simply not how the math works, Don. Because if you bring both of those guys back and don't move any other defensemen, you're just going to have the exact same 6-7 defensemen that you had last season. Jordan Harris is probably gone. I assume Jack Johnson's going to retire. He played his part. He did a fine job being the 8th defenseman on the Blue Jackets this season. But here's the thing, the main 7 defensemen for the Blue Jackets this season, Werenski, Fabbro, Provorov, Matejchuk, Severson, Christensen, Gabranson. All of those guys, if you re-sign both Fabbro and Provorov, all 7 of those guys are going to be back next year. I know that there's not really any defenseman knocking the door down in Cleveland. Again, I'm a big fan of Stanislav Sozil. I think there's definitely NHL potential with him. Obviously, there's a couple of guys that are a little bit further down the line in, Charlie Ehrlich, in Luca Morelli, etc. I know that people have talked a little bit about Damon Hunt, who hasn't showed a ton in Cleveland, I don't think, but I think that might be to his benefit. Obviously, he was injured to finish the season, I believe. But there's no one. They don't have David Jiricek in the wings anymore, right? They don't have. Dante Matejchuk was really their own A+ defensive prospect, and I think he counts as a prospect still, depending on how you define prospects. He didn't even play a full season for the Blue Jackets, but he's a full-time NHLer come October, right? So yes, they have they don't really have anyone knocking down the doors. They don't have anyone that they need to specifically make room for, right? And that's kind of where I'm going with this thread. There's some free agents out there. None of them really blow the doors off, apart from, if you can get Gavrikov, word on the streets is he wants $7 million for 8 years, which I wouldn't give him. I think LA probably will. But if you can get him for less, Gavrikov is, I've talked about it a lot. He's my top UFA target for defense for this team. But you've got 2 pending UFAs, although not even pending UFAs, I don't think technically. They are just officially UFAs now, because the salary cap has flipped over. They're 2 of, I would say, the top 5 defensive UFAs that are available this season. You've got Dante Fabbro, who's a waivers pickup, and you've got Ivan Provorov, who was acquired in a trade, not last summer, but the summer before. So he's just finished his 2nd season with the Blue Jackets. And we're going to do another episode of Locked on Blue Jackets thought processes, or thought experiments is the word I'm looking for, not thought processes. We don't do any thought processes here. Surely not. But we're going to do another kind of thought experiment of, okay, you can only keep one of them. Which one do you keep, right? And I know it seems like that's an easy answer for a lot of people, and I think a lot of everydayers will go, oh, well, obviously Jay wants to keep Dante Fabbro. And that's true, but when I was doing some prep for this episode, I think the answer is a little bit less straight up than a lot of people are saying. That's not to say that I would take Provorov over Fabbro, but I think like, I look and I'm like, okay, I can see some of what he brings to the table, right? So we'll talk a little bit about Fabbro, we'll talk a little bit about Provorov, and then we'll kind of compare them, right? So let's start off with Ivan Provorov, who the Blue Jackets had a real problem with injuries 3 seasons ago. I believe that was one of the seasons where if they didn't set the NHL record for man games lost, they got real close to it. I think they hit like 500 man games lost or something, and that was, that was the year that they had Werenski with the separated shoulder. They had Jake Bean with the separated shoulder. I believe Eric Branson separated his shoulder near the end of the season there. They had Adam Boquist, who I like a lot, but is made of glass. That was the season where they had to ice like Andrew Peak and 5 rookies in a game because that was the players that they had, right? Jarmo Kekalainen, for all for all his faults, I think approached the right question, which was the Blue Jackets have an injury problem on defense. They need guys that can play minutes, right? I don't know that I would not have made the trade for Provorov. I think I was pretty clear about that at the time, and I maintained that that's not the trade I would have made. But that is the trade that was made, and I can understand his thought process, right? Because Ivan Provorov has been, I believe, has played the most out of any Blue Jacket over the past 2 seasons, right? And that's maybe a little bit unfair because Werenski missed some of last season. But Ivan Provorov eats a ton of minutes. Like, for me, that's his best quality, right? Is he plays a lot. Is he, like, are they justified in playing him that much? Probably not entirely. Like, he plays top-line minutes, but I don't think he's top-line caliber, right? He plays a ton on the penalty kill, gets some power play time, but less. But he doesn't play as much as Werenski because no one plays as much as Werenski. But like I didn't pull up the exact numbers, but my guess is he probably had the second most ice time on the Blue Jackets this season. Yeah, Werenski played like 250 minutes more than him because Werenski is insane. But Ivan Provorov played 1,915 minutes for the Blue Jackets this season, which, if I just go back to sorting that by teams and do it that way, that would still be like, where is he? That'd still be, I think, top 40 in the. There he is. It's top 15. He had the 13th most ice time in the league, right? Obviously, Zach Werenski led the way. Kale McCarr more outsider right behind him, but like Ivan Provorov, again, played more than 12. Only 12 other NHL players played more than Ivan Provorov last season. He plays a ton. Sometimes that's not a good thing, but I think there is something to be said for a defenseman that can play a lot of minutes and stays healthy. Obviously everyone kind of had that where their butthole clenched a little bit. I think, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. But if corporate doesn't find out, then I'm fine. But there was that moment where I think they were playing the Lightning, and it looked like he dislocated his thumb and didn't finish that game. And I think everyone was like, oh God, it's bad. And then he came back and played the next game. So I assume what happened is he just popped his thumb back in himself and was like, yeah, I'm fine. Which feels insane to me, but extremely, extremely durable defenseman. I liked him this season a lot more than I liked him last season. Last season, I thought he was atrocious. This season, I thought he was a lot better. And the thing is, that is down to the fact that he played a much more suitable role, which was he played both a second line role for a bunch of the season once Fabbro came in anyway. He played some of the season with Werenski, which was fine, but like, I was happy with it up until I saw the Werenski-Fabbro pairing, and I was like, oh, okay, no, this is much better. But he slid down to the second pairing, played a lot with Dante Fabbro. And again, I thought some of David Jiricek's best minutes last season were when he was playing with Provorov. I think Provorov is an extremely good, what's the word I want? Complementary player, I guess, is what I'm saying. Like he is at his best when he's playing on the second pairing, and he is playing the responsible adult on the line, on the pairing, I think is where I'm going with this. Like I liked the Jiricek Provorov duo a lot when Jiricek was still on the team, and I liked the Provorov Matejchuk duo a lot. I think Matejchuk was in a good place with Provorov. I think Provorov let Matejchuk do a lot of the leading in terms of generating the offense. I think he really complemented the best parts of Matejchuk's game, right? And herein kind of lies the problem with Ivan Provorov, because to my mind, he is a bottom 4 player that is looking to get paid like a top line player. And we'll talk about money in a minute here, but Ivan Provorov, I believe, made about $6.5 million on the cap, or made $6.5 million AAV this year. But some of that was retained. I think 25% of it was retained, or 33% of it was retained. So he was actually only on the Blue Jackets cap for about $4.5 million. I think a lot of people assumed that was just his cap hit, and so people are like, "Oh, this player is great for $4.8 million," and sure, he's great for $4.8 million. This is not a almost $7 million player. He's going to want to raise. I think he had a pretty good season, so he's going to want to raise, and he's at that exact age where we've talked about this with Gavrikov, we've talked about this with Aaron Ekblad yesterday as well. He wants that long-term contract. He's 28, 29. He is just turned 28 in January, if I'm doing my math right, which I'm probably not. He's looking for that long-term contract. He wants that 8-year contract to go up to when he's 36, and then he can maybe do another short contract, or he could sail off into the sunset with his millions and millions of dollars, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. I just don't know that it fits into the Blue Jackets timeline, which I've kind of talked about a lot. So I'm not going to get super into it there, but the crux of it is I would take Ivan Provorov probably 4x4 max. He is going to command potentially double that. And that's kind of where I have the issue, right? This is not I don't think Ivan Provorov is a fit on this team. I think that what Ivan Provorov wants and what the team needs are in very, very different zip codes right now, and I'm not sure which zip code Don Waddell is paying more attention to. So that's kind of my thoughts on the Provorov of it all. I'm going to take a quick break, then we get back. We'll talk a little bit about Fabbro, what he brings to the team, what kind of his shortfalls are this season, and by that I mean what I think the team will say to him to justify not giving him money. But we'll also talk a little bit about why I think he is the better option of the two players to keep around, and we'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First of all, I'm going to tell you about wonderful pistachios. Are you looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with wonderful pistachios. They're one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1-ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep feeling fuller for longer. I love the no shells variety. It is the perfect grab-and-go snack for me, because I'm a gremlin, and I love to sit at my desk and just tip the entire packet in my mouth in one go and eat like 27 pistachios in one crunch. But if you are the kind of person that loves cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are also a classic favorite. Get snackin and get crackin with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We've talked about Provorov, his ups, his downs. Let's talk a little bit about Dante Fabbro, who, again, is a player that I've talked about a lot on this podcast over the past kind of couple of weeks. And I think I've talked enough about kind of his strength as a player. He is a perfect, I'm going to run through them, but I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. He is a perfect complementary player, much like Provorov, but I think Fabbro is better. His underlying stats are just slightly better than Provorov. Again, I'm going to go back to hockeyviz.com, which is one of my favorite sites to use for this. Ivan Provorov is -3% on offense, which means he is 3% worse than average, and he is 2% worse than average on defense, which is not great. He's pretty good on the penalty kill, absolutely dire on the power play. Fabbro is 1% above average on defense and 1% above average. 1% above average on offense, 1% above average on defense. So really, again, a player that really just kind of is a net zero, doesn't create a lot of offense, doesn't give away a lot either. Is fine on the penalty kill, is also kind of dire on the power play, but I do think that a lot of that is just the fact that the Blue Jackets power play has been cursed by evil goats or something. Typically speaking, Fabbro is a perfect complementary player. I like the way that he works with Werenski. I think Werenski likes playing with him a ton. I said yesterday that I think that might weigh into some factors here. If they say to Werenski, like, do you want us to keep Fabbro around? Like, will that make you happy? I think Werenski would be like, yeah, that would make me happy. I think there's definitely something there that can be said about keeping one of your franchise faces happy. If that's a thing that is important to the Blue Jackets front office, which I would hope that it is, because we've seen unhappy stars before, and the team has basically gone, well, see ya. So I like to think that they'll take into account the fact that Werenski and Fabbro was a really good pairing. And I don't know, but herein lies kind of the argument for me, or the argument that I think can be made here, is this was a very, very small sample size. Like, just numerically speaking, Dante Fabbro played, if I can just pull the numbers back up again, he only played 62 games with the Blue Jackets this season. Ivan Provorov has played more than double that. They have a much bigger sample size of Provorov. It was this lightning in a bottle for Fabbro. Is he going to, because this has been the argument that I've seen with people, right? Is it's a career year for Provorov. Obviously, he's trying, right? It's also a career year for Fabbro. Who are we to say that this is not just Fabbro putting in the effort because it's a career year? And also, like, frankly, who's to say that he's not putting in this much effort out of spite because they put him on waivers in Nashville, right? Again, we've seen that before. Players get claimed in expansion drafts, for example, and they go on to score 40 goals in a season after having, like, 6 career goals total in the 4 seasons previous. Not that I'm still bitter about William Karlsson or anything, but, like, you get my point here, right? Fabbro is a very small sample size. We don't know what's going to happen next season. I think that if they keep Fabbro around, I think probably it'll just be kind of the same as they had this season. But there's nothing to back that other than like vibes, right? And as much as I love talking about like who has the highest vibes per 60 on the team, you can't build a team on vibes. That being said, I think something that's really interesting, and this is something I found out today when I was just kind of poking around, is I feel like Ivan Provorov is touted as this kind of like big, tough, he hits, he blocks shots, he is good offensively and good defensively, when actually he's kind of so-so at both. He's better offensively than defensively, but like is still not great. I found something interesting today, which is Dante Fabbro gave out the most hits on the Blue Jackets defense core this season. He led all Blue Jackets defensemen with 66 hits. Second place, Jake Christensen. Ivan Provorov only had 28 hits on the season, which is, I believe, like Jack Johnson had 21 hits, but he barely played. Erica Branson had 25 and he barely played. Jordan Harris had 23, barely played. Like, Werenski's not a physical guy. He only had 19 hits, but like I really, really thought that Ivan Provorov would hit more than he does. What's also interesting is Dante Fabbro led the defensive core in shot blocks as well. He blocked more shots than anyone else on the Blue Jackets blue line with 136. Now, Ivan Provorov was third after Werenski and Fabbro, but I just thought it was really interesting that all 6'0" of Dante Fabbro versus, like however big Ivan Provorov is. And all of the talk is, well, one of them is a big defensive guy that blocks shots and throws hits, and the other one is more of a skill guy, when actually Fabbro's throwing hits and blocking shots with the best of them. So I thought that was just interesting. That's not really like relevant to a lot of my points because I don't really value hits or shot blocks. I guess shot blocks a little bit, but I don't really value hits because all hits mean is that you didn't really have the puck a lot. I do think it's interesting that all of the Blue Jackets defensemen were, I think all of them anyway, were hit more than they hit other people, which again does just mean they had the puck more and the opponent hit them, right? Because everyone's like, oh my God, Werenski only hit someone 19 times this season. He took 133 hits. What that means is that Zach Werenski had the puck 133 times, and someone tried to take it from him. Whereas the 19 hits, I don't know. The more you hit, the more you don't have the puck. That's just how you can only hit someone if you have the puck. If you hit someone without the puck, that's a penalty, right? I will say Dante Fabbro took more penalties than I would like. He took 19 minor penalties. Provorov took 13 minor penalties and also a major penalty, and I don't remember what that major penalty was off the top of my head. I don't think it was a fight, which means it must be like boarding or something. And like I have a vague memory of him getting kicked out of a game, but I have no specific memory here. So you'll have to forgive me for not knowing the specifics there. But Fabbro, I would like him to take less penalties. I don't know how many penalties. He drew 13. Provorov drew 15. So again, Provorov led the team in drawing penalties, and he actually drew more penalties than he took. So I'll give Provorov that as well. But I think it all comes back to Provorov is going to, and we're going to go back to talking about money because of course we are. Provorov is going to demand more money and more term than Fabbro and offer probably a lesser product. I think Fabbro, you look at the underlying stats, like Fabbro plays less than Provorov. Fabbro is not going to add a ton of points into the mix, although I don't know what the point situation was like. Provorov had 33 points in 82 games. Fabbro had 26 in 62 games. Fabbro had 9 goals. Provorov only had 7 goals. So, like, again, that kind of comes out in the wash, basically. At Fabbro, you're going to get a few more points from. So it really depends on, well, I guess, honestly, I don't know what Provorov or Fabbro's camps are asking for. It could be that Fabbro's out here being like, yes, I want $8 million a year for the next 8 years based on these 60 good games that I had. And I don't think that that's... Don Waddell will hand out money to players that he's familiar with more than players he is unfamiliar with. Now, that being said, he's probably about as familiar with Fabbro as he is with Provorov, maybe a little bit less in Fabbro's case, but it really comes down to how much money does each player want, and is that money worth the product that they're putting on the ice, right? So let's take another quick break, and when we get back, we'll try and figure out how much money Dante Fabbro is going to want, and whether that is enough to send Provorov somewhere else. So we'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're talking about Dante Fabbro and Ivan Provorov and which one we would keep. Obviously, we're leaning towards Dante Fabbro, and I know that there's, here's the thing. There is a world in which they bring both of them back. I don't know that I would do that. Like, if I had to choose, I would probably bring neither of them back over bringing both of them back. But if you had to choose one or the other, like, again, I'm leaning Fabbro. Just based on what I think players are going to ask for, right? If it turns out that, again, if you can get Fabbro to sign, like, again, he's making $2.5 million this year. I don't think he's I don't think Waddell is going to be happy like doubling that or more. So you've got to think, okay, Fabbro is probably going to come in at about 4 or 5 million. The question is for how long, right? Provorov, he wants that long-term deal, right? He knows that the Blue Jackets have cap space. He is familiar here. I think he likes it here. Obviously, his brother is committed to Ohio State. Not coming over for a couple of seasons. I believe he's got a couple of years to play in the USHL before he goes to Ohio State. But like, it feels like the family is kind of putting down roots in Ohio a little bit as well, right? I believe him and his wife / partner are about to have a baby. So, he obviously wants to stick around. But is that what's best for the team? And like at this point in time, I don't know that giving Provorov more than $4 million for 4 years is the right thing for this team. We go back to, well, this team needs right defense badly. The Blue Jackets have all of the left defense that they need right now in Werenski, Matejchuk, Christensen. Like for my money, those are your 3 left defense. On the right-hand side, like you've got signed currently, you've got Severson and you've got Gabranson. Both of whom are third pairing guys, right? So you've got to fill those holes. Fabbro is a natural righty, I believe. So that, for me anyway, is a point in his favor. Provorov has done very well on the right this year, but I don't think he loves playing his offside. I think, and he is the third best left defenseman on this team. He's not going to unseat Werenski. He shouldn't unseat Matejchuk in the top 4. So if he wants to stay, he's going to have to play on his offside. And I don't think that 7x7 is a reasonable amount of money to spend on someone playing their offside who has had one out of who's had a 50% success rate of the seasons that he's been here, right? I tried really hard to kind of come at this neutrally and be like, well, Fabbro is good at these things, but Provorov is good at these things, and Fabbro is bad at these things, and Provorov is bad at these things. But like, the more angles I look at it, the more I am just like, Fabbro's just a better fit. Like, if it turns out that they sign Provorov instead of Fabbro, again, I'm not gonna like immediately go, oh, this is a horrible deal. Like, I don't immediately think that choosing Provorov over Fabbro is like a fireable offense or anything. It's not the choice I would make. And again, it really does depend on what Provorov would sign here and also what Fabbro gets on the open market, right? Because if he thinks that he can, get someone like San Jose to give him $8 million for 8 years, which free agency teams love to spend big in free agency, right? If he thinks he can get more on the open market, then sure. But for me, a lot of this has to be, I think a lot of the summer has to approach the defensive core of the Blue Jackets very similarly to how I think they need to approach the goaltending, which we'll talk about maybe next week. We'll do a full goalie week. Why not? It seems like this is going to be the defense week based on yesterday and today's episodes. But like, here are the things that you need to worry about for the defense is Matejchuk needs a defense partner. He, to me, is the most important piece of the defense core right now. You know what you've got in Werenski. You know he's going to be that guy. You need to find a partner for him. But for me, more important is finding a guy that can either be good for Matejchuk or grow with him. Provorov ostensibly can be that, but I don't know that you want to give him a long-term contract when there are, in my opinion, better options out there. So that's kind of my ending, I think. Which is, I don't think a surprise to anyone here is, which one do I keep? I keep Fabbro. If I can only pick one, I keep Fabbro. Like, again, does it depend on the contract? If it's, Provorov at 4x4 and Fabbro at 8x8, then yeah, I'd probably say Provorov. But like, if they both are kind of being offered the contracts that they are both worth, or the contracts that they are likely to sign, I think is probably a better way to put that, which for my money is probably Fabbro. Fabbro probably wants, 5x5 or more. Provorov allegedly wants 7x7 or more, potentially 8x8. For me, that's just not worth it. It's taking up a roster space of a younger, better player, and it kind of turns into the problem that the Blue Jackets have had for a very, very long time, which is they have too many depth veterans that are taking up roster spots, right? I do think that they have a logjam at forward that they're going to have to figure out. They don't have as much of a logjam at defense, but if you keep Provorov around for 8 years. Like, again, it's a lot of money that you're spending on David Severson and Ivan Provorov, which for my money is a bottom pairing duo. So I think Fabbro being younger, I think he's better for Werenski. I think he fits the timeline of the team better. I like Fabbro better than Provorov in terms of what he brings to the team. So I don't think I'm going to change my mind about this. I really tried to convince myself the other otherwise, but I really just that's how I feel. So we'll see what happens when free agency hits. Potentially before that, the Blue Jackets have been suspiciously quiet for a few weeks now. So we'll see what's going on there. Presumably something will happen at some point. I don't know what. Trade, contract extension. I don't know. Probably. I'm trying to think if I have travel booked for the next month or so, and I don't, but I do have plans on like the second weekend of June. So I would pinpoint that as I'm going to be on a train. So I would mark that weekend as the Blue Jackets are going to do something. Put that in your calendar, and we'll see what happens. Thanks for listening to this episode. Thanks for making it your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Blue Sky at JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets on Twitter. And what are we going to talk about tomorrow? Tomorrow, I think we're going to talk about let's talk about some potential trade options. Who might be available in a trade? Everyone is picking at the corpse of the Buffalo Sabres right now, so let's poke at that and see what falls out. So that's going to be tomorrow's episode, I think. Thank you for listening to this episode, for making it your first listen of the day every single day. And until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.